Hello there. Welcome to Just About Space, where the stars drift slowly and your thoughts drift even slower. Tonight, you're not here to solve anything, not here to win an argument or memorize a fact. You're here to drift through the vastness of the universe, through quiet theories and ancient light, through everything we still don't understand, and maybe never will. Because space isn't just a place, it's a mood, a silence, a question that never stops echoing. In this journey, we'll float through mysteries that stretch from the edge of the observable universe to the folds of your own imagination. Theories about life, about death, about planets that shouldn't exist, and forces we still can't explain. But we'll do it gently, slowly, like a ship with no destination, just the joy of moving. You don't need to keep up. You don't even need to stay awake. This isn't a lecture. It's a lullaby made of gravity and stardust. So get comfortable. Let your body sink into the bed or chair or wherever you've decided to pause for now. Let the weight of the world go, because tonight we're not on Earth anymore. We sit somewhere else. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere just about space. You wake up, not jarringly, not to an alarm, just a slow, natural stirring. The light that filters through your curtains is soft, not piercing, not too dim, just enough to warm your face and tell you it's time. You stretch, instinctively, and your body knows exactly what to do, lungs expanding to take in air you never questioned. Air with the right mix of oxygen, the right pressure, the right temperature, not too dense to suffocate, not too thin to starve your cells. You never had to adjust a dial to breathe. It's just there, waiting. You reach for water, clean, clear, tasteless. It doesn't sting your throat, doesn't need to be filtered through 3 machines. It flows effortlessly, and your body, thirsty from the long night, takes it in like it was made for it. Which, you think quietly, it kind of was. You step outside. The ground holds you. Not too hard, not too soft. Gravity doesn't crush you, nor does it let you float away. It's perfectly tuned, like a song written for your muscles. The sky is an unassuming blue, a blue you've probably stopped noticing, but it could have been orange, or purple, or black. But no, it's a steady, gentle blue, like a permanent sigh of calm stretched across the sky. You keep walking. Trees offer shade without needing permission. Bees do their work without spreadsheets or deadlines. Clouds roll by, slow, unbothered. The temperature hovers in that rare band where water is liquid, where your cells function, where a stroll doesn't feel like a battle. Everything, absolutely everything, seems strangely, and that tits when the question sneaks in. What are the odds? What are the odds that this planet, out of all the rocks hurtling through the void, has just the right atmosphere, the right magnetosphere, the right tilt, the right moon, the right mix of carbon and nitrogen and water, not only to allow life, but to nurture it into sentient thought and quiet morning walks? Some might say it's luck, others say design. Some point to billions of years of cosmic trial and error, while others whisper about creators or simulations or intentions we'll never understand. But for now, for this section, you're not here to argue either side. You're just here to notice, to feel that strange alignment, that hum beneath the noise, that eerie sense that Earth wasn't just possible, it was oddly tailored. You look down at your hands. 5 fingers, opposable thumbs, skin that heals, eyes that adjust to light, nerves that tell you when something is too hot, too sharp, too far. You fit here, perfectly, as if you were meant to. And yet, you know you weren't placed here, not like a toy on a shelf. You emerged through pain, through time, through something wild and strange called evolution. And yet, somehow the match still feels uncanny. Now, look up. The sun is there, stable, ancient, generous, a star that burns just right, not flaring too much, not dying too soon. A sun that lets plants photosynthesize and oceans stay fluid. A sun that marks the rhythm of your days with a precision clocks can only imitate. If it had been slightly closer, the earth would have boiled. Slightly farther, and it would have frozen. But it didn't. It stayed, right in that delicate sliver called the habitable zone. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the rules of the universe lean toward life, like gravity leans toward mass. Maybe life is the natural outcome when physics is allowed to play long enough. Or maybe, and here's the whisper, maybe something, someone, somewhere wanted this to happen. It's a dangerous thought, a beautiful one, a quiet one. So you walk a little farther, not expecting an answer, just letting the question breathe. You notice how your feet fall into rhythm, how your spine stacks effortlessly, how language floats in your mind like birdsong, unbidden and yet perfect. And you think again, what if Earth was designed? Not in a religious way, not in a way that demands doctrine or belief, just in the simplest, most poetic sense. What if some force, conscious or not, shaped this planet with an intention for balance, for curiosity, for experience? The birds don't seem to care, the wind doesn't answer, but the feeling remains. And maybe that's enough. Not to prove anything, not to change anyone's mind, but just to wonder, to sit in the question, to feel the fit of things, the way Earth holds you without needing to. Because in the end, you don't need to solve the mystery to appreciate the magic. You just need to notice it. And now, you've drifted far enough to see where you live, but not really, because this is the great paradox. You are inside something so vast, so exquisite, so violently beautiful, and yet you can never see it from the outside. Your galaxy, the Milky Way, curls around you like a spiral of phantom light. But you've never seen the spiral. Not really. You are in one of the arms, the Orion Arm, a little spur, a backwater lane in a city of stars, dust and memory. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light-years across. That's 100,000 years of light, just to travel from one side to the other. But you can't make the trip. You're trapped within, staring out like a fish trying to map the shape of the ocean by watching bubbles float past. Even your best telescopes can only peer through the murky dust and glowing haze. You've mapped other galaxies, Andromeda, Whirlpool, Sombrero, and from their elegant forms you assume your own must be similar, spiral arms spinning in slow, majestic arcs, a thick central bulge glowing gold, a dark halo filled with things you can't see, but must be there, dark matter, the invisible glue that stops your galaxy from flying apart. But the truth is, you don't really know what the Milky Way looks like. Not fully. You can't step outside. There are no vantage points far enough away, and the light that could show you is blocked, blurred, or lost. Still, you try. At the heart of the galaxy is a monster, Sagittarius Us*, a supermassive black hole, millions of times the mass of your sun. It doesn't devour the galaxy, not quite, but it holds it, anchors it, warps time around it. Near it, stars whip around at speeds that seem impossible, evidence of a gravity well too deep to fathom. Out here, in your little arm, the stars rotate too, but not the way you'd expect. They move faster than they should. That puzzled you for a long time. If gravity alone were in charge, the stars farther out should slow down, but they don't. They zip along at almost the same speed, as if held by some unseen hand. That hand you call dark matter. You can't see it, touch it, or interact with it directly, but it has mass. It bends light. It's invisible scaffolding, holding your galaxy together like bone beneath skin. You know the galaxy is old, older than your species, older than your planet, formed from gas clouds that collapsed and spun, birthing stars which lived, burned and died in violent explosions called supernovae. These deaths scattered heavy elements into space: iron, gold, uranium, carbon, the ingredients of planets, of bodies, of thought, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen in your breath, the iron in your blood, all forged in stars that died before Earth was born. Over time, the galaxy recycled itself. Dust from old stars formed new stars, new planets, new chances. The arms of the spiral shimmer with pink nebulae, birthing chambers, dense clouds of gas, collapsing under gravity, sparking to life. Stars form in clusters, dance together for a time, then drift apart. Most stars have planets. Some of those planets have water. A few might even have life. Maybe even thoughts. Maybe even questions. Is the galaxy alive? You wonder. It's not a conscious thing. Not like a brain. But it evolves. It transforms. It regulates. It flows and pulses. Could it be, in some vast metaphorical sense, a kind of organism? Or is that just human projection? A galaxy is not alive, but it creates life, often and with exquisite patience. Your location within it is both terrifying and perfect. You orbit a small star, 26,000 light-years from the center, a safe distance. Too close, and radiation would shred your DNA. Too far, and heavy elements needed for life would be rare. You are, as the anthropic principle whispers, in a very lucky spot. And yet, you'll never truly see the thing you're in. Imagine living your entire life inside a cathedral, with no windows. You can feel the shape, hear the echoes, see the play of light, but you'll never walk outside to admire its stained glass or flying buttresses. You are part of it. That is your limit. The Milky Way contains over 100 billion stars, possibly 400 billion. It has satellite galaxies of its own, the Magellanic Clouds. It is not alone, either. It is part of the local group which drifts toward the Virgo supercluster. Your galaxy will collide with Andromeda in about 4.5 billion years. The stars likely won't crash. There's too much space between them, but gravity will shred their shapes. A new merged galaxy will form, possibly elliptical, possibly unnamed. Until then, you name what you can. Milky Way, from the Latin Via Lactea, the path of milk, a smear of light across the night. Cultures all over the world gave it names: river of heaven, spilled grain, backbone of night. All metaphors for something vast, unreachable, glowing. You've sent probes to the edge of your solar system. You've dreamed of starships, warp drives, exits, but the distances mock you. Even your fastest craft would take tens of thousands of years to reach the next star, and that's just one. You can't step outside the galaxy. You are in it, bound by it, shaped by it, and forever blind to its full form. But you try, and in trying you build maps, simulations, glowing renderings of a spiral galaxy seen from above, as if you've flown far enough to turn around and look, as if you could rise from the dust and light, stretch past nebula, skip across star clusters, and finally look back. And see it. And know, I am part of that. That is the galaxy that can't see itself. But maybe it dreamed up something that could try. Still deeper now, past suns with no names, past clouds of stardust left by ancient deaths. Out here it's quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, but mystery. And somewhere in this silence, there's something missing. A planet. Not just any planet. A planet that was once predicted, mapped, and expected. A planet that should have been there, had to have been there, according to all your beautiful calculations. But when you looked, nothing. This is the story of Planet Phi, the one that vanished before it was even found. In the early 1800s, astronomers noticed something strange about Uranus, the seventh planet from the Sun. It didn't move quite right. Its orbit wobbled. It drifted just slightly from its predicted path. At first, they blamed observational error. Maybe their telescopes were off. Maybe the math was imperfect. But over time, they realized something was pulling on Uranus. Something massive, unseen, something further out. They called it Planet X. And this idea wasn't wild. After all, it worked once before. In 1846, following calculations by Urbain Le Verrier and John Couch Adams, Neptune was discovered, exactly where it should have been, gravitationally tugging on Uranus. It was a triumph of invisible mathematics. But then came the next mystery. Even Neptune didn't fully explain Uranus's orbit. There had to be something else. Further still, something darker. Enter Percival Lowell. In the early 1900s, he began a project to find this hypothetical planet. He never lived to see it, but years later, in 1930, a young man named Clyde Tombaugh, using Lowell's observatory, discovered Pluto. Pluto was far too small to be the gravitational culprit. Tiny, icy, and lonely. Pluto's mass couldn't nudge Neptune or Uranus in any meaningful way. It was a coincidence, a cosmic sleight of hand. You found a new world, but not the one you were looking for. And that's when the real paradox began. For the rest of the 20th century, scientists kept hunting. Some thought there must be a massive planet, or even a small star, hidden in the outer solar system. Others wondered if a passing star had once disrupted the orbits, and then moved on. More data, more date. The math didn't quite work. The perturbations grew smaller. Some wondered, had the original Uranus data just been wrong? And if so, then Planet X never existed. It was an illusion. A ghost conjured by a numerical hiccup. But the idea wouldn't die. In the 1980s and 1990s, a new version emerged. This time, it wasn't about Uranus and Neptune. It was about the Kuiper Belt, a scattered disk of icy debris beyond Neptune. Some of these objects had odd, elongated orbits, as if they too were being pulled by something massive, unseen and distant. So once again, the hunt resumed. This time, the theoretical planet was called Planet 9. According to recent models, Planet 9, if it exists, would be about 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth, orbiting far beyond Pluto in a highly elliptical path, taking thousands of years to complete a single trip around the Sun. It would be dark, cold, and nearly invisible, reflecting little light, emitting none of its own. And yet, its gravitational fingerprint might still be etched in the icy pathways of smaller bodies. Some orbits curve in alignment, others cluster mysteriously. The numbers whisper, maybe, but you haven't seen it. Not yet. So, is Planet 9 real, or is it another echo of Planet X? A new name for the same absence? There's another theory too, a darker one. What if the object influencing these orbits isn't a planet, but a black hole? A frozen, ancient remnant of a star, captured by the sun's gravity eons ago, drifting silently at the edge of the solar system. No light, no reflection, just mass. It would be nearly impossible to detect. And yet, the tug would be there. Still, there's a deeper paradox. You call it a missing planet, but maybe it's not missing at all. Maybe it was never supposed to be seen. Maybe it's hiding because it's meant to remind you your maps are never complete. Your solar system, this tidy diagram you teach in school books, is more like a haunted house, full of shadows, forgotten corners, and doors that won't open. Every generation thinks it has the full picture. Mercury to Neptune, add Pluto, subtract Pluto, throw in Eris, Haumea, Sedna, and other dwarf planets. Each one a surprise. Each one a reminder that the edges of your knowledge fray like an old tapestry. So when you imagine this vanished planet, whether it's Planet X, Planet 9, or something else entirely, you're really imagining the space where your certainty ends. And in that space, wonder returns. Because maybe it's not one planet. Maybe it's a whole hidden system, moons, rocks, or rogue worlds, slipping past your view with silent indifference. Maybe the solar system has boundaries you haven't even begun to measure. Maybe it doesn't end. Maybe it just fades. And you, tiny, brilliant, frustrated you, stand at the edge, squinting into the dark. And the dark squints back. So you name what you don't understand. Planet 9, Planet X, Nibiru, Nemesis, the Vanisher, the Intruder, the Outcast. Each name is a placeholder, not just for the object, but for your own longing to know, to complete the puzzle, to make the sky behave. But maybe the sky was never meant to. Imagine looking into the deepest part of the night sky, a patch of darkness so still, so empty. It appears to be the purest void imaginable. No planets, no stars, no galaxies, just black. And then, a faint shimmer. Not a star, not a nebula, but something softer, a background, a subtle, omnipresent glow, like the afterimage of a forgotten fire. This isn't imagination. It's the cosmic microwave background, the oldest light in the universe. Discovered almost by accident in 1964 by Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, this glow is the leftover radiation from the Big Bang itself, a silent, low-frequency whisper from a time when the universe was only 380,000 years old. Before that moment, the cosmos was an opaque soup of energy and particles, but as it expanded and cooled, it reached a point where atoms could form. Light, at last, could travel freely, and it still does. That ancient light, now stretched by billions of years of cosmic expansion, surrounds you, everywhere. No matter where you point your telescope, the signal is there. A quiet, ghostly fog that blankets space in an almost perfect uniformity, but not quite perfect. If the background glow were the same in all directions, the universe would have remained formless. No galaxies, no stars, no planets, no you. But it isn't perfectly smooth. Tiny fluctuations, 1 part in 100,000, speckle the microwave background like static on an old TV. It means that the deepest void of all glows, not because of what it contains, but because of what it remembers. You picture emptiness as cold, but the cosmic background has a temperature, a very precise one, 2.725 Kelvin. That's just above absolute zero. Not nothing, not silence. A kind of cosmic hum. If space is mostly empty, then why does emptiness have a temperature at all? The answer lies in the nature of the void. In physics, a perfect vacuum, completely empty space doesn't truly exist. Even the void teems with quantum fluctuations. Pairs of virtual particles blink in and out of existence, borrowing energy from nothing, returning it just as fast. And this dance, strange as it sounds, is essential. It fuels Hawking radiation at the edge of black holes. It helps explain why atoms don't collapse. It suggests that nothingness is never truly empty. So when you stare into the abyss, it glows not just from the past, but from the underlying structure of reality itself. Scientists have mapped this background radiation in exquisite detail. The COBE satellite, then WMAP, then Planck. Each generation sharper, clearer, more haunting. The maps show a universe almost symmetrical, but not quite. A cold spot here, a hot stripe there, and the more you stare, the more strange patterns seem to emerge. Some physicists suspect these irregularities hint at something beyond. A collision with another universe, perhaps. Evidence of a multiverse. A scrape between brains. A fold in the geometry of space itself. And suddenly the glow becomes a message. A ripple from before your universe was born. But even if you don't go that far, the paradox remains. You look at the darkest place in the sky, and it gives you light. The oldest light. A light that isn't from any star. A light that has seen no shadow, no surface, only the echo of becoming. You exist because of it. And it exists in spite of everything you've ever thought about nothing. It's strange, too, that this background glow is both omnipresent and invisible. Your eyes can't see microwave radiation. You walk through it every second, unaware. It wraps around you, presses gently against your skin, flows through every room, every breath, yet it is older than stars, and it is everywhere. The next time you look at the night sky and think it's silent, remember this. You're not just seeing the stars as they were thousands of years ago. You're seeing the very edge of the visible universe. Not a wall, exactly, but a limit. The furthest point from which light has had time to reach you since the beginning of everything. Beyond that, darkness again. Not because there is nothing, but because there hasn't been time for something to arrive. So the void glows. It glows because of time. It glows because of heat. It glows because you need it to. Without that faint microwave background, there would be no structure in the cosmos. No galaxies, no clouds, no water, no minds, no quiet rooms filled with wandering humans, listening to the story of space. And here you are, wrapped in a blanket of forgotten photons. It's worth noting too that this glow has cooled when it first escaped the plasma of the infant universe. It burned at 3000 Kelvin, bright, blue, fierce. But the expansion of space itself stretched its wavelength, redshifted it into microwave territory. The heat dimmed, the light softened. Over 13.8 billion years, the fire cooled into a whisper. And still, it speaks. This is not the poetic kind of glow, not the shimmer of stars, not the glint of gold. It's the glow of math, the glow of entropy, the glow of a universe settling into itself, the glow of a memory that cannot be erased. So the next time you feel small, lost in thought, drifting among stars, overwhelmed by infinity, think of this. Even the void glows, quietly, constantly, faithfully, just for you. You first saw it as a streak, a smear across the sky, pale and fast, trailing a ghost of ice. Comets have always felt different from stars, unpredictable, emotional, almost alive. They don't belong to constellations. They arrive uninvited, disappear for centuries, and always return just slightly off course, as if they remember and have opinions about the visit. And you begin to wonder, are they just frozen rubble, or is something older and stranger wrapped in their spiral? A comet is a body of contrast. At its core, a solid nucleus made of rock, dust, frozen water, ammonia, methane, and carbon dioxide. And yet, when it draws near the sun, it transforms, heat awakens it. Ice sublimates, jets of gas burst through the surface. It is as if the sun makes the comet speak, as if the fire draws out thoughts from a silent traveler. Some comets, like Halley, Hale-Bopp, or 67P/Churyumov-Gerasimenko, were born in the earliest days of the solar system. 4.5 billion years ago, before Earth had continents, before the moon had cooled, these comets were already there, orbiting in far dark regions like the Kuiper Belt or Oort cloud. They are in many ways fossils of the solar nebula, unchanged fragments from the very cloud that birthed the sun and planets. You sit not just looking at a streak of light, you stess, looking at memory. And some scientists wonder, did those memories seed us? So you ask again, does the comet remember? It remembers the cold. It remembers the silence between stars. It remembers what the solar system was before it knew itself. And then, the theory bends further. Some physicists, a fringe, yes, but not entirely dismissed, speculate about forms of consciousness that operate on astronomical scales. Could a comet, obeying gravity and chemistry, somehow also act as a vessel for pattern, feedback, memory? Could the solar system itself think, if only slowly? Probably not, but possibly yes. Because consciousness as we understand it may not be limited to carbon and neurons. It may simply be the emergent result of complex systems feeding back upon themselves. And a comet is nothing if not a feedback system. Its orbit changes, its material reacts to heat, Its tail reshapes with every pass. It is not aware, no, but it behaves like something that learns. And even if it doesn't think, it does affect thought. Think of how comets haunted the minds of kings. In medieval Europe and ancient China alike, comets were omens. To some, they meant plagues. To others, the fall of dynasties. Halley's comet in 1066 was said to foretell the Norman invasion. In 1910, when Earth passed through its tail, newspapers claimed the gas might poison the atmosphere. People panicked, prayed, bought bottled air. So a comet, whether conscious or not, has always lived inside human consciousness. And isn't that a kind of shared dreaming? We map their orbits, name them, wait for their returns. Every 76 years, Halley comes back like a ghost knocking politely on the sky. Most comets come only once, flung inward from distant clouds beyond Pluto, making their fiery bow before returning to the black. Some, pulled too close, die in the sun, a burst of particles, a final sigh. Others are captured, their paths bent, turned into moons, or lost forever. You start to see them as characters, not objects. The Rosetta mission didn't help. In 2014, humans landed a spacecraft, the Philae lander, on the surface of Comet 67P. The comet looked bizarre, like a misshapen rubber duck, pitted and fractured. It smelled like rotten eggs and gunpowder. It was outgassing, hissing, and then Philae, after bouncing, settled into a shadow and fell silent. But before that, it sang. So maybe comets do speak, just not in language. They speak in cycles. In heat, in erosion and return, in a kind of slow cosmic poetry. And here's another theory, one that chills the mind while soothing the soul. Some astronomers believe that comets from other solar systems, interstellar comets like Oumuamua or 2I/Borisov, occasionally pass through ours, visitors from other suns, formed in different clouds with different stars, not captured, not staying, just passing through. They don't just carry materials, they carry stories, alien chemistry, different histories of light and heat and gravity, and when they leave, we never see them again. Like a thought passing through the mind of the universe. So the next time you see a comet, don't just make a wish. Say hello. Because it might be older than Earth. It might be carrying the ingredients of your body. It might remember a time when space was just beginning to know itself. And for a brief moment, you shared the sky. You drift now into a region where chaos reigns in perfect silence. This is not a storm of wind or water. It is not born from thunderclouds or seas. It is the storm of creation, of collapse, of stars tearing themselves apart and being reborn, not with noise but with pure gravitational drama. And here in the vacuum of space, there is no sound to mark it, no roar, no warning, only invisible waves and silent light. Imagine a massive star, perhaps 20 times the mass of our sun, burning at the end of its life. For millions of years it has fused hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into heavier and heavier elements, right down to iron. But iron is a dead end. It takes more energy to fuse than it releases, and when that fusion halts, gravity wins. Suddenly, entirely, in less than a second, the star's core collapses inward, the outer layers crash down, then rebound outward in a shock wave of unimaginable violence. A supernova is born. You would not hear it, but if you could watch from afar, you'd see a star suddenly brighten by a factor of billions, outshining entire galaxies for a few short days. Then it fades, leaving behind either a neutron star, spinning fast and beaming radio pulses like a lighthouse, or a black hole swallowing light, space and time itself. These storms of lightless power shape the cosmos. Their shockwaves seed space with heavy elements, iron for your blood, calcium for your bones. Everything you are was forged in the belly of a silent explosion. The galaxy is not a static painting, it is alive with motion, a choreography of orbits and collisions. Clouds of gas drift through interstellar space, sometimes gathering into denser patches. These are the nurseries of stars, molecular clouds chilled to near absolute zero, heavy with hydrogen. Under the quiet pull of gravity, clumps within them contract, heat, and ignite. And so the cycle begins again. But it isn't gentle. Star formation is turbulent. As new stars ignite, they flood their surroundings with radiation, carving out cavities in the cloud, pushing gas away even as gravity tries to gather it. The process is self-limiting, sometimes self-destructive. Some clouds are torn apart before they can complete their stellar labor. You are still drifting, and now you pass through a remnant, a fading bubble of expanding gas, still glowing from the energy of a supernova that happened 10,000 years ago. The tendrils stretch like the arms of a jellyfish, blue and red, filamented and curling in silence. This too is a kind of storm, not violent anymore, just echo. Astronomers call them supernova remnants. Some are circular, some elongated, some distorted by magnetic fields or neighboring stars. We detect them in X-rays, in radio, in infrared. To human eyes, they are ghosts. But they are everywhere, millions of them, writing history into the fabric of the galaxy. And then you move closer to the heart of chaos, the galactic center. Here, gravity intensifies. The stars are densely packed, sometimes just a few light days apart. They orbit a central presence that is not just massive but monstrous. Sagittarius A*, the supermassive black hole at the core of the Milky Way. It is 4 million times more massive than our Sun. It is invisible. But we see what it does to the matter that gets too close. Gas spirals inward, heating to millions of degrees. Magnetic fields twist into tangled snarls. Flares burst forth from the disk, not light escaping the hole itself, but from the tortured material around it. And yet, despite this violence, life exists, perhaps even because of it. Supernovae and black holes regulate star formation, trigger new growth, stir the pot of chemistry. Without their violence, the galaxy might be stagnant, empty of the elements required for complexity. There is balance in destruction. You pass through a region known as a superball, created by the combined winds of many massive stars. These stellar winds are not air but streams of charged particles moving at hundreds of kilometers per second. Over time, they carve out vast cavities in the interstellar medium, pushing gas away, sweeping it into shells. It's like watching invisible spheres ripple out from clusters of stars, shaping the future. Occasionally, these bubbles crash into one another, compressing gas between them and triggering more star formation. Even the void makes more stars. This is the soundless storm. Pressure without touch, violence without noise, creation born from collapse. Sometimes the storm reaches Earth. In 1987, a supernova erupted in the Large Magellanic Cloud, a satellite galaxy of our own. It was the brightest in centuries, visible to the naked eye. Neutrinos, tiny ghost particles, were detected on Earth, arriving just before the light. In that moment, astronomers knew they had witnessed a core collapse in real time. A star died, and we felt its death. What else is coming? And so are we. Every storm is a page in the galaxy's story, a punctuation mark in the long silence. And even though you cannot hear them, they continue across millions of light years, across billions of years. Quiet fury, radiant silence, creation through collapse. Close your eyes. Somewhere far from here, a star is dying, and from its death, another world may one day rise. And you're still floating, and the storm moves on. You're floating now, not in space, but in something stranger. It stretches in every direction, and yet has no texture, no weave, no edge, no color, and yet everything you've ever known is stitched into it. This is not a void, and it is not a thing. It is space-time itself, the silent framework that does not merely hold the universe, but is the universe. Einstein didn't see space and time as separate anymore. He saw them married in one four-dimensional dance, space-time. If you speed up through space, you slow down through time. If you fall toward a massive object, time itself thins out. That's why astronauts in orbit age differently than their twin siblings on Earth, and why GPS satellites have to account for the warping of time, or we'd all end up lost chronologically as well as geographically. But you don't need to be a satellite to feel this fabric. Every second of your life has unfolded inside its invisible embrace. You've aged with it. You've walked across its gentle bends, never realizing you were climbing the soft slope of a planet's gravity. When you drop something, it doesn't fall because of an invisible force. It rolls downhill, down the curves in space. And when you lie down at night, gravity tucks you in. The planet beneath you is denting the fabric, and you're caught in the cradle. Now imagine that cradle stretching, not because of anything pushing it, but because the fabric itself is expanding. This is the secret behind the Big Bang. Not an explosion in space, but an explosion of space. The distances between galaxies aren't widening because they're moving through space. The space between them is growing. More of it. Fabric without edge, unfurling from within itself. And the further away a galaxy is, the faster it seems to flee. That's not illusion. That's the Hubble expansion. Redshift is its whisper. Light stretched to longer wavelengths as the fabric pulls apart. Every time you look at the night sky, you're seeing starlight from galaxies that are running away from you, and you can measure how fast by how red they appear. It's not that the stars are red, it's that space itself is stretching their light. But not everything stretches. Galaxies hold together, solar systems remain bound. Why? Because gravity holds those bundles tight, refusing to let the fabric unwind them. It's only over vast intergalactic distances that the stretch becomes noticeable. In the gaps between clusters, space grows, and then there's the rip. Not now, not yet, but some theories suggest the expansion is accelerating, that a dark energy, some unknown property of the vacuum, is pulling the fabric apart faster and faster. But others believe in cycles, that space-time may rebound, fold in, collapse and begin again. A big crunch or a bounce, like breathing, cosmic inhale and exhale. No one knows. The fabric offers no opinions. It doesn't whisper its plans. You look down now, though there is no up or down, and picture the Earth. It's just a bead caught in a depression in this pliable field, and the sun, an even deeper well. Light itself curves around these indentations. If you pass close enough to a star, even a photon changes course. You've heard the term event horizon. It's the point of no return. Cross it, and not even light can escape. But here's the twist from the outside. Nothing ever crosses that line. You, falling in, appear to freeze at the edge, fading and reddening, never quite vanishing. This too is the fabric's doing. Not a force, not a wall, just a geometry, a truth about how mass shapes the world around it. You might wonder, then what is the fabric made of? Is it a thing or just a set of rules? Is it continuous or is it pixelated, broken into discrete bits at the smallest scales? Some physicists believe in quantum foam, that space itself trembles at the Planck length, bubbling and shifting like boiling water. At that scale, the smoothness of space breaks down, distance becomes uncertain, geometry dances. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for tonight. You know what light is. You felt its warmth on your skin, watched it scatter through clouds, seen it refract into color through glass. But what about its absence? Not just darkness, but something more deliberate, more evasive, something that mirrors everything you understand without ever letting you see it. Let's start with a question that broke astronomy. Why don't galaxies fly apart? They spin far too fast. According to Newton and Einstein, The stars on the outer edges of a galaxy should drift off into space, unable to stay bound to the center, and yet they don't. They cling, they orbit as if something invisible is holding them, something massive. But it's not just galaxies. Look at galaxy clusters, vast collections of thousands of galaxies. They move and orbit and swirl around one another with impossible cohesion. When we measure their total gravitational pull, it's far too strong to be accounted for by what we can see. Now let's talk numbers. Only about 5% of the universe is made of ordinary matter, the stuff you and your chair and your breath and your memories are made of. The other 27%? That's dark matter, and the remaining 68%? Something even stranger, dark energy. But let's stay with the dark matter for now. You reach your hand out in this cosmic silence, trying to grasp it, but it slips through, not because it's like air or gas or even dust, but because it doesn't interact with light at all. It doesn't reflect, absorb, or emit electromagnetic radiation. You could have a bucket of it next to you, and you'd never know. And yet, it has gravity. That's how we know it exists. Its fingerprints are all over the sky, bending light around galaxies, influencing cosmic structure, shaping the growth of the universe like scaffolding beneath the skin of reality. So, what is it? We don't know. Not exactly. There are theories, each stranger than the last. Some scientists think it's made of WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles, heavy particles that drift through space, and occasionally, very occasionally, bump into regular matter. Others suggest axions, light particles with weird properties that fill the universe like an invisible field. Still others believe it could be sterile neutrinos, or some unknown cousin of the particles we know. And here's where things get stranger. You might be walking through billions of dark matter particles every second. Earth may be moving through a dark matter wind as it orbits the galaxy. There may even be a halo of dark matter enveloping our solar system, a transparent sphere influencing us at every moment, completely undetectable to your senses. Try to picture it, a ghost structure of the universe, shaping everything, anchoring galaxies in place, pulling stars together, but never glowing, never flickering, never whispering a single photon to us. A dark mirror to the cosmos. Some theories suggest it might even clump, that there could be dark matter planets, or dark matter stars, structures bound by gravity but invisible, intangible. Could there be entire dark galaxies? Could there be life made of dark matter, forms of existence that never evolved in the glow of a star, that never needed eyes or fire or heat? Some have speculated that dark matter might pass through ordinary matter in ways we can barely imagine, that a dark matter asteroid could drift through the Earth without so much as a ripple, like a ghost ship passing through fog. Others wonder if dark matter might influence the brain, the mind, the flow of consciousness, though these are highly speculative, more poetic than proven. But the poetry is useful, here in the dark. You imagine your body as a constellation of particles, quarks, protons, electrons floating in fields bound by electromagnetism, humming with entropy, and yet you are surrounded, interlaced, perhaps even penetrated by another kind of matter, a deeper current, a silent twin. Even the cosmic microwave background, that faint afterglow of the Big Bang, shows the fingerprints of dark matter. It influenced the clumping of matter in the early universe. Without it, galaxies may never have formed, stars may never have gathered. You, sitting here now, may never have come to be. So if light gave you vision, dark matter gave you structure. As you lie there, consider that we've built massive underground detectors filled with liquid xenon and hypersensitive sensors just waiting, hoping for a single dark matter particle to collide with something. Just once. So far, nothing. We've looked to the Large Hadron Collider, smashing particles together, to try and produce something beyond the standard model. Still nothing. But absence doesn't mean failure. It just means the mystery remains intact. That's the beauty of the dark mirror. It shows us our limitations, It humbles our arrogance. It reminds us that for all our light, we are surrounded by something larger, quieter, stranger, and perhaps older. So you breathe in now and let go of needing to understand. Let the question remain open. Let the silence stay unexplained. Dark matter doesn't ask to be known. It simply is. You once thought of empires as things built from stone, walls rising, banners waving, footsteps echoing on marble floors. But out here, in the deep dark between galaxies, empires take on another form. They are not built. They are born, not from politics or conquest, but from gravity and gas, time and dust. Tonight, you drift through the forgotten structures of the universe. Not castles, but galaxy clusters. Not borders drawn by kings, but filaments of dark matter stretching across billions of light years. Empires that never heard of Rome, yet dwarf its legacy entirely. Let's begin close, with a galaxy, say, the Milky Way. Your home, 100,000 light years across, filled with somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars. Massive, ancient. But now zoom out. Our galaxy is part of a local group, a small family of galaxies orbiting one another in a kind of cosmic ballet. And this local group, just a single citizen in the sprawling metropolis known as the Laniakea supercluster. That word, Laniakea, comes from Hawaiian, meaning immense heaven. It stretches 520 million light years across, containing over 100,000 galaxies. That's your local neighborhood. That's your cosmic suburb. You are part of a cosmic web, a map of empires written not in blood or treaties, but in light and dust. Every atom in your body was forged in an empire of light, inside stars, in the violent deaths of supernovae, in neutron star collisions that spat out gold, platinum, uranium. Your bones, your blood, your thoughts, all recycled stardust. Empires rise when gravity gathers this dust. The swirling clouds collapse, light ignites, and galaxies breathe stars into existence. Some clusters are peaceful. One such empire is the Virgo cluster, located about 53 million light-years away. It contains over 1,300 galaxies and forms the core of our local supercluster. It is not stable. It is not symmetrical. It is not tidy. Galaxies within it are in motion, being pulled, distorted, consumed. Some spiral into larger galaxies like snacks. It's not unlike human history, really. Borders shifting, cultures merging, civilizations swallowed by something bigger. But in this case, the battles are fought over billions of years, and the casualties are entire galaxies. Let's not forget the Great Attractor, a gravitational anomaly located roughly 200 million light-years away, toward which everything in our region of the universe seems to be drifting, including you, including the Milky Way. We don't fully understand what's there. A dense region of dark matter, an enormous supercluster, a distortion in the fabric of space-time itself. No one knows for sure, but it pulls us, inexorably, as if it were a throne at the center of a hidden empire. And yet, amidst all this scale and silence, the light, you look around and see galaxies glittering like cities on a map. Spirals, ellipticals, irregulars, some blue with youth, some red with age, some shaped like wheels, others like cigars or flowers or ghosts, each one with its own ecology of stars, planets, gas and possibility, each one with its own destiny. And here's a strange thought. Many of these galaxies are already dead. Their light has taken millions, sometimes billions of years to reach you. The stars you see may be gone. The structures you admire may have already crumbled. What you witness in the telescope is a ghost of an empire long since fallen. Cosmic archaeology in real time. Which brings us to the theory of look-back time. The further we peer into the universe, the further into the past we see. When we look 13.4 billion light-years away, we are seeing infant galaxies, forming just 400 million years after the Big Bang. Galaxies the size of dwarfs, burning hot with newly ignited stars, proto-empires, barely begun. And yet some are surprisingly advanced, too advanced perhaps. This has sparked controversy among cosmologists. How did such large, luminous galaxies form so quickly? Did we get something wrong about early structure formation? Are there new physics waiting to be discovered? These empires of dust and light don't just stretch space, they stretch our understanding of time. You close your eyes and drift through this web. You are nothing to it. You are smaller than the smallest dust mote, and yet you are made of it. You are an echo of its fire. Your brain is a record of its order. Your body, temporary, fragile, is a ripple of its long, silent plan. And maybe that's what matters. Not whether we can rule these empires, but whether we can learn from them. That dust becomes life. That light outlives memory. But they shine anyway. Sleep, out here, means something different. On Earth, you lie down to escape gravity. In space, gravity never lets go. But still, even here, something like sleep persists. Rhythms, silences, shadows. Let's begin with the idea of circadian rhythms. Your body's built-in clock, tuned to Earth's 24-hour spin. That rhythm collapses once you leave the planet. In orbit, you might witness 16 sunrises and sunsets per day. On the Moon, daylight lasts for 14 Earth days, and so does the night. On Mars, a day is a bit longer, but the sky glows pink and the cold seeps in like doubt. Still, astronauts sleep. They strap themselves into soft cocoons, floating in silence. No pillow, no bed, just a zippered sack against the wall of a pressurized can. Their dreams are private, unrecorded, except for a few strange reports of floating through corridors filled with people who weren't there, of hearing music in silence, of waking without knowing where the top of their body was. Sleep in space becomes untethered. Time dilates, direction vanishes. But sleep is not just for astronauts. The universe itself has periods of quiet slumber, long eras when the fires cool and the light fades. Cosmologists speak of the stelliferous era, the age we are living in now, the era of stars. But eventually even this era will end. The stars will die out, the galaxies will dim, and the universe will enter a long period known as the degenerate era. In that distant future, trillions upon trillions of years from now, there will be no new stars, no bright galaxies, only fading white dwarfs slowly cooling, neutron stars spinning in silence, black holes waiting for their eventual evaporation. A universe asleep, not dead, but dreaming. This is the cosmic night. But let's come back to you, because even now, your brain, this fragile clump of organic matter, performs a miracle every night. You lose consciousness, you drift, and your mind sifts through memory, noise, meaning, and nonsense. Sleep is not absence, it's rearrangement, restoration. Some theories even suggest that dreaming is the brain's attempt to simulate survival, that dreams are tiny model universes, assembled from scraps, allowing you to rehearse fears, relive losses, or stumble upon moments of impossible clarity. Others go further. In quantum consciousness theories, speculative but fascinating, the mind may be entangled in ways we don't yet understand, that sleep and dream may serve a deeper purpose in aligning internal and external time, a syncing process with the greater rhythms of reality. And there's the eerie possibility. What if the universe is dreaming you? In the Vedic texts of ancient India, Brahman dreams the world into being. In some interpretations of modern simulation theory, you, your experiences, your sleep, your memories, might be rendered like code. Your need to rest, to lose awareness and return, could simply be a feature of system refresh. In this view, sleep is not escape from reality. It is reality, momentarily freed from the illusion of agency. But now, shift again. Think of the deepest forms of sleep found in the animal kingdom. Torpor, hibernation, suspended animation, mechanisms that slow metabolism, preserve energy, and survive the uninhabitable. Bears do it in winter. Frogs freeze solid in ice and return. Certain fish burrow into the mud and don't wake for years. And in science fiction, sleep becomes a doorway through time. Cryo-sleep, hypersleep, suspended dreaming during interstellar travel. All the great spacefaring epics rely on this to sleep so deeply that time passes like a whisper, to cross the stars by closing your eyes. Theories of suspended animation aren't fantasy. Experiments are already underway, cooling the body, reducing metabolism, lengthening the stillness between heartbeats. One day, long after your time, humans may truly sleep through centuries, not metaphorically, but biologically, waking on other worlds without memory of the voyage, born into silence. But what happens when sleep becomes permanent? Some have suggested that consciousness, or something like it, may persist for a moment inside the event horizon, a flicker of awareness before even time itself unravels. If so, it would be the most profound sleep in existence, a dream from which nothing wakes. Some believe the universe has gone through cycles of sleep and waking, infinite big bangs and big crunches, a cosmic breath, a heartbeat slowed across infinity. And you, this tiny observer with soft lungs and closed eyes, you are part of it. So now, as your thoughts quiet, as the pull of gravity becomes a memory, as your body lies still in its tiny room on a spinning rock in a minor arm of a galaxy, on the edge of a supercluster drifting through an endless web of stars, you feel it. That weightless pause before dreaming. The gentle reminder that everything from the stars to your heart to the background radiation of space itself needs rest. Close your eyes and let the cosmos hold you. The universe is still here, and it sets okay to sleep. You're floating now, not through space, but through memory. Not your own, of course. The universe doesn't have a mind like yours, but it remembers. It remembers in light, the kind that traveled billions of years only to be noticed by a brief creature like you, lying still, staring into a ceiling, pretending it's the sky. You are not in space, not really, but the photons landing in your retina were born in galaxies that no longer exist, flung from stars that died before Earth knew trees, and still, the glow survives. This is cosmic afterglow, fossil light, the radiation of a universe still trying to cool down after the fire of its birth. The universe has no grave, not yet, but it has ghosts, and they are made of light. The stars you see, many of them are gone. Their light is not a signal of presence, but of absence. The shine you admire is the echo of their exit. Some of this light is the cosmic microwave background, the oldest visible thing. Not a star, not a galaxy, not a planet, just pure tired light stretched across time, cooled to the faintest whisper of warmth. You could wrap your whole body in the signal and never feel a thing. It's everywhere. The glow of a universe that used to be fire. It's the last breath of the Big Bang, still clinging to us 13.8 billion years later. But the glow that outlived its flame is not just in radiation. It's in every red giant that shed its outer layers, leaving behind a white dwarf that shines not with fusion, but with memory. White dwarfs don't burn. They cool. Their heat is residual. Imagine a hearth long after the fire's gone, still radiating warmth into the night. That's what a white dwarf is. And when it fades, when it becomes a black dwarf, which may not even exist yet, because the universe isn't old enough, even that silence will be a kind of presence. You wonder sometimes why we're so captivated by light, perhaps because we instinctively know how much of it is borrowed. You light a match, you see the flame, you blow it out, but the smoke tells you it was there. Light is smoke without a scent. It tells you what used to be. The James Webb Space Telescope, the one orbiting far from Earth, where the planet's heat won't interfere. It doesn't look for light the way you do. It looks for what the eye can't see. Infrared, warmth, residuals, Stars go supernova. You know this. The violence is hard to describe. It's not just a burst, it's an ending that refuses silence. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your teeth, it came from those explosions. But what's left behind? A neutron star? A black hole? But not forever. Every photon loses energy as it travels. This is redshift, not metaphorically, literally. The expansion of space itself stretches the wavelength of light, turns blue into red, visible into invisible. Eventually, the stars that exist now will become undetectable. The universe will keep expanding. Every point will move away from every other point. Galaxies will disappear from view. Even light cannot outrun that fate. And yet, you, a creature made of skin and silence, you caught some of it. Your species built mirrors and lenses and called them telescopes. You launched them into the sky. You gathered old light like archaeologists gather bones. You treated photons like time travelers. You've seen quasars not with your eyes but through screens and renderings. Beacons from galaxies whose cores are powered by black holes. They shine so brightly you'd think they were nearby, but they are ancient. And still, we use this light to navigate. Sailors used stars. Now scientists use X-ray jets from pulsars, gamma bursts, microwave emissions. Light has always been a map, but what happens when the light fades? One theory, the heat death of the universe, predicts that in time all energy will be evenly distributed. No more gradients, no more stars, just cold particles in endless space. No light, no dark, no contrast at all. The glow will end, but not with a bang, just with stillness. But you're here now, and the sky above you, the one you don't see but still remember, is littered with flames long since extinguished, and yet their glow still reaches you. It hits your skin, it enters your eyes. And though your mind may drift off before understanding the mechanics, you feel it, the warmth of things long gone. The trace of something ancient. So lie there, still, and let the glow pass through you. Because for now, the flame is gone. But the glow, it lingers. You float again, slowly. Not drifting aimlessly this time, but held in place by a strange kind of gravity. The gravity of something that shouldn't be burning anymore, yet is. You orbit a contradiction. A star that forgot to die. Stars, as you've come to learn, are not eternal. They are machines with fuel tanks, cosmic engines burning hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, and so on, until they run out. That's the plan. That's the physics. But some stars linger, burn longer than they should, or come back after the end, or shine when there's no explanation left. They are the anomalies, the exceptions, the defiant candles that outlive the wick. In rare instances, a dying star pulls matter from a companion, cannibalizing another celestial body to fuel one last flash of light. These are called novae, and in their most extreme form, type Ia supernovae. They explode with such consistent brightness that astronomers use them as cosmic mile markers, a ruler made of ruin, a flare made of memory. But some stars skip the script. Consider the so-called zombie stars. That's not a nickname from science fiction. That's a term actual astrophysicists have used to describe stars that detonate as supernova and then keep burning. They should be gone. They should be dust, but they refuse. In 2014, a star labeled IPTF-14 Ulls erupted in a supernova, and then again, and again, 5 times, over nearly 2 years. A phoenix with a grudge. There's no accepted model for this. Not yet. The best theories involve strange shells of gas or cores collapsing and reinflating, or physics we don't yet understand. But the image lingers, a star burning past its expiration date, like a candle that flickers, flares, and then flares again, not because it can, but because something compels it. And then there are the magnetars. Take everything terrifying about a neutron star, its unimaginable density, its rapid spin, its cold remnant heart. and now crank up its magnetic field 1,000-fold. That's a magnetar. When these creatures release energy, they don't fade politely, they rupture. In 2004, a magnetar called SGR 1806-20 released more energy in a fraction of a second than the sun does in 100,000 years. If it had been closer, it might have wiped out the ozone layer, but it wasn't. So instead, its death scream crossed the galaxy, brushing past your little world like a whisper from a forgotten god. The paradox of the star that forgot to die lies not just in physics, but in our need for closure. You want the cosmos to follow rules: burn, fade, collapse, repeat. But in the vast old sky, rules bend. Sometimes they break, and sometimes they smolder for billions of years. Some red dwarfs, the smallest, dimmest stars in the universe, are so efficient with their fuel, they might outlive the universe itself. That's not an exaggeration. They burn so slowly, they've never had time to die. Not one red dwarf has yet expired. And so a contradiction forms: some stars explode too many times, and others never die at all. One forgets how to stop, and the other takes so long that the universe might end first. Both defy the expected curve. Then you remember. You too are made of stars. The iron in your blood, the carbon in your breath, the calcium in your bones. Your body is a song assembled from shattered cores and reconstituted dust. You are what happens when a star dies, and what happens when its light survives. But what if it hadn't died? A star forgot to die. Hello again, traveler. You're floating once more, not aimlessly, but curiously, alongside a planet that defies the checklist. It's not where it should be. It's not what it should be. And yet, it's there. Quiet, whole. A planet that breaks every rule we thought we understood. In the mid-1990s, astronomers began detecting massive gas giants, planets the size of Jupiter, not far from their suns, but hugging them, orbiting so close in fact, that their years lasted mere days. The best guess is migration. Perhaps these planets formed farther out, like Jupiter did in our solar system, but something, a gravitational resonance or a passing star or sheer chaos, pulled them inward. They moved across the disk, barreling through the inner system like bowling balls through fine china. What did they destroy along the way? What rocky planets were flung into their star or out into interstellar space? What little Earth-like orbits were ruined? And here you are, staring at one such world, bloated, wind-scoured, and gleaming like a furnace, so close to its sun that metals rain from its skies. Not water, not methane. Metal, there's one, called WASP-76b, where iron vapor condenses and falls like molten hail. Then there are the rogue planets. White dwarfs, the corpses of suns, sometimes retain planetary systems or develop new ones. How does a planet survive the supernova? Some don't, but others form later. From the debris, the remnants, the ash cloud disks, born from death. A second generation. A ghost world circling a stellar grave. Kepler 452b is sometimes called Earth's cousin. It orbits a star very much like our sun, in a zone not too hot, not too cold, but the star is older. This cousin is older, which means if it had water, if it had life, it may have developed billions of years before we ever lit a campfire. If it had cities, they might now be dust. If it had oceans, they may have boiled away. But the planet remains, hanging there, too familiar, too quiet. If Earth is the calm middle child, these planets are its forgotten siblings, eccentric, haunted, or cruel. Some are tidally locked with sun-facing sides permanently burning and night sides frozen into shadow. Some are puffy, less dense than cork, floating if placed in a giant bathtub. We revise the map. We admit we were wrong, and we stare longer. The universe doesn't owe us clean models. It laughs at our diagrams, and every time we think we understand the rules, where gas giants belong, what can orbit what, how heat works, what makes a planet stable, something drifts into view and humbles us. The truth is, planets are messy. They form in violence, they migrate, they collide, they survive in debris rings and in chaos. They live in symphony and in silence. The only constant is surprise. And so you float by this world, close to a sun it never should have met, and wonder if something this big, this wrong, this beautiful can exist. Then maybe everything you thought was fixed isn't. Maybe it was never following them in the first place. You drift again, this time toward a distant star, not because of what it is, but because of what it isn't doing. This star, known in your maps as KIC 8462852, or more famously, Tabby's star, is, to put it mildly, strange. It's dimming, not gradually, like a star nearing the end of its life, and not predictably, like a star being eclipsed by a planet. No, it dims erratically, drastically, and with no clear pattern. Imagine watching the sun blink at you, not like a lighthouse, like a strobe light. It is unsettling. They didn't mean little green men. They meant megastructures, enormous constructs, like vast solar panels or orbital habitats, designed by advanced civilizations, something big enough to block out a measurable fraction of a star's light. Not once, not periodically, but with a strange, uneven rhythm, as if a colossal, malfunctioning blindfold were sliding across the sky. You see, when a planet transits a star, the drop in brightness is smooth, predictable. But Tabby's star, it dipped by 3%, then 15%, then 22%. A planet like Jupiter might dim a star by 1%. So what could be causing this? Freeman Dyson, the physicist who first proposed such an idea in 1960, wasn't thinking about aesthetics. He was being practical. A civilization on the Kardashev scale, a scale measuring a society's energy usage, might eventually need to harness the full output of its star. And if we ever saw such a thing, it might look exactly like what Tabby's star is doing. But here's the thing, we still don't know for sure. And this is the quiet ache of astronomy, that we observe phenomena light years away, and interpret them through filters, graphs, and models. We cannot reach out and touch these stars. We infer, we model, we guess. Could other stars host megastructures? We've looked. Data from the Kepler mission and other surveys have been combed for similar irregular dimming, but Tabby's star remains one of the most compelling outliers. No smoking gun, no clear repeat. But there sips a haunting silence in that too. Because if a civilization were advanced enough to build such structures, wouldn't they also know how to hide them? Imagine a civilization capable of managing matter at stellar scales. They might not want to be seen. They could build structures that absorb or redirect all light. They could use cloaking techniques far beyond our physics. It's easy to fall into romantic speculation, to want it to be true, but even the sober answers carry awe. Think of what it means if the dimming is caused by shattered moons or planetary debris, entire worlds ground into dust, orbiting their star like funeral ash, systems that lived, formed planets, and collapsed. Or if it's ice and gas from comets, then consider the cosmic ballet required for them to align and block starlight so thoroughly, so repeatedly. When we look at stars, we are reading biographies. Some are young and stable, some are old and trembling, and some, like Tabby's star, hold secrets in their flickers. You drift past it now, this eerie sun. It glows gently, but its light is wounded, flickering behind invisible veils, and in your silence you wonder, is this the whisper of intelligence, or simply the cosmos laughing in patterns we don't yet understand? Perhaps we still never know, but the search continues, because whether it's an alien artifact or a cosmic accident, it tells us this: the universe is not empty. It is busy. It is building. It is breaking. And it is far, far stranger than we were ever taught. You are drifting again, not through stars this time, but through motion itself, through the quiet tremble of galaxies pulled by something unseen. The concept sounds simple at first. Galaxies move, everything in the universe is expanding, right? The Big Bang sent galaxies flying away from one another like sparks from a firework, and over billions of years we've mapped those motions, calculating the expansion with astonishing precision. It's not just a guess, it's a science called cosmological redshift. The farther away a galaxy is, the faster it seems to recede. This wasn't gentle meandering. It was a determined tug, as if something enormous and invisible beyond the edge of the observable universe was pulling them all in one direction. They called it dark flow. Some theories speak of a neighboring universe, a realm outside our cosmic bubble that has gravitational influence but no visibility, like a ship passing in the fog, unseen but felt. Others speculate about leftover structures from before the Big Bang, massive gravitational anomalies born of physics we no longer understand, perhaps relics of a time before inflation, or rips in space-time itself, where gravity leaks through from a higher dimensional world. And then there's the sobering idea that the anomaly isn't outside the universe, but inside our models. That dark flow might be an illusion, a statistical fluke, a misreading of the cosmic background radiation. In fact, some later studies using data from the Planck satellite failed to replicate the WMAP findings, suggesting the effect may not be real at all. Because whether dark flow exists or not, the fact that we even had to consider it cracks open the door to possibilities far stranger than we're comfortable with. It suggests that the universe may not be isotropic, not the same in every direction, that the cosmos could have scars, bulges, and warps beyond our field of vision, that something is lurking just beyond our cosmic horizon, and it's playing by different rules. And here's the unsettling part. If dark flow is real, we may never be able to observe what's causing it, because it's pulling things from beyond the visible edge of the universe, beyond the boundary where light has had time to reach us. That edge is not a wall, but a limit, a boundary of time. Anything farther is, for now, unknowable. So we're left with the motion, the drift, like leaves on a stream, spiraling toward a bend we cannot see. You imagine yourself standing on the deck of a ship, seeing stars shift ever so slightly, watching galaxies lean just a little more toward a direction that shouldn't matter. You'd have no idea what pulled them, you'd only know something had. And it's not just motion, it's velocity. These galaxies are speeding along at over 600 kilometers per second, in sync, across 1 billion light-years of space. That kind of agreement doesn't happen by accident. The debate continues. Some cosmologists are convinced it's a data artifact, an illusion born of our limited instruments. Others argue that the consistency across different measurements, X-ray background, galaxy velocities, supports the reality of dark flow. The community remains divided, cautiously curious, because the implications are enormous. Or maybe it sits more personal than that. Maybe we are the fish in a bowl, and dark flow is the flicker of a shadow passing outside the glass. Not a threat, not an answer, just a whisper from beyond. You don't know. No one does. But that doesn't make the question less real. And that's what dark flow represents. Not a confirmation of alien gravity, but a refusal of the universe to remain simple. It is the tug of mystery, the gravitational force of curiosity itself. Something is pulling on our understanding. And whether it turns out to be a new truth or a noble mistake, it changes how we think about the universe. Because if galaxies are being pulled by something we can't see, then so are we. And the flow goes on. You're no longer drifting through stars or chasing dark matter. Instead, you're spiraling inward now, into the microscopic, into the coiled strands of something far closer than any galaxy or DNA. Most of the universe feels distant, alien, but this is personal. This is the code inside every cell of your body, the twisted ladder of nucleotides that somehow knows how tall you'll grow, whether you're like cilantro, and the shape of your memories. What if, as some have claimed, your DNA holds secrets you've never unlocked? Welcome to the DNA activation myth, one of the strangest intersections of fringe science, ancient mysticism, and speculative biology to arise in the modern age. It sounds like science fiction, and by most academic standards, it is. The idea has roots in both frustration and wonder. In biology, around 98% of the human genome was once classified as junk DNA. This non-coding material doesn't directly instruct the body to make proteins, and for years scientists didn't understand its purpose. It was dead code, leftover clutter from evolution. At least, that was the assumption. Today, we know that this so-called junk DNA plays a regulatory role, switching genes on and off, shaping expression, and contributing to developmental complexity. It's not useless, it's subtle. But into this grey area stepped something else. Theory, myth, hope, a wave of people. From New Age practitioners to conspiracy theorists to spiritual channelers, claimed that this uncharted portion of our genome was suppressed potential, that humanity was operating at just a fraction of its true capacity. Where mainstream science saw silence, they heard a hum. They envisioned a time, past or future, when these dormant strands might awaken, perhaps through cosmic alignment, spiritual practice, or even the evolution of Earth's magnetic field. Some even tied the idea to alien involvement, that humanity had been genetically altered in antiquity, and that DNA activation would reconnect us to star ancestors or forgotten capabilities. Let's be clear, there is no empirical evidence for these additional strands of DNA. Genetic material is observable under microscopes. There are no invisible spirals hiding in the aura. But science doesn't always kill the myth. Sometimes it feeds it by leaving gaps. For example, there's the question of junk DNA itself, or the phenomenon of epigenetics, which shows that lifestyle and environment can influence how genes express themselves, or rare conditions where people exhibit memory, math, or music abilities without formal training. Savant syndrome, for instance. How does a child with autism suddenly play Beethoven by ear after hearing it once? To the mainstream, these are fascinating neurological anomalies. To DNA activation theorists, they're glitches, flashes of what we could be. Some claim that DNA vibrates, not metaphorically, but literally, that it emits and receives electromagnetic signals, that it acts like an antenna tuned to cosmic information, and that the higher the frequency of human consciousness, the more strands we can unlock. And maybe that sits why this myth persists. Now, let's bring the microscope closer. DNA doesn't lie, but it also doesn't tell the whole truth. We've discovered layers of regulation, from methylation to chromatin remodeling, that affect how genes function without altering the sequence. You and your identical twin may have identical DNA, but different experiences, memories, and even health outcomes. So where is the self? In the code? In how the code is read? Or in something beyond? Maybe the myth of DNA activation isn't entirely about biology. Maybe it's about longing, for transcendence, for evolution, for permission to believe that we haven't peaked yet. You lie in bed, eyes closed, listening to your breath, and beneath your skin, billions of cells divide. Instructions unfold in silence. Strands uncoil, enzymes copy base pairs, proteins fold into life, all without your awareness. You are a quiet miracle of recursive instructions. You are already activated, and yet it's okay to wonder if there's still more to come. That maybe, just maybe, the universe isn't finished writing in you yet. And maybe some codes aren't meant to be read, but felt. Imagine this. You are no longer confined to Earth, nor drifting freely through the stars. Instead, you're seated in a sterile observation chamber, under soft blue light, surrounded by instruments you can't identify, and a presence you can't see. Something is watching you. not maliciously, not warmly, but with a kind of cold scientific detachment. And in that moment, a theory returns. What if you are the experiment? The hybrid program isn't a singular theory, it's an evolving narrative. Equal parts modern folklore, ancient mythology, and whispered warning. At its core, the claim is simple yet vast. Humanity is not entirely human, or at least not purely so. According to believers, Earth has been, and still is, the site of an ongoing genetic experiment conducted by non-human intelligences. The purpose? Let's break it down. The foundation of the idea draws from an uncomfortable intersection of two powerful mythologies, alien abduction accounts, and ancient gods tampering with mankind. From the Sumerian Anunnaki stories, in which sky beings fashioned humanity to serve them, to modern UFO narratives, in which people report being taken aboard ships, probed, and returned with vivid memories of strange children, eerily human, but not quite. These hybrid children, as described in abduction lore, often appear with large eyes, delicate features, and unnatural calm. They speak telepathically. They possess knowledge far beyond their years, and they are presented not as threats, but as successors. Visitors often describe being told, "These are your children," or even, "You helped create them." It's one thing to wake up from a nightmare. It's another to believe you've been part of a breeding program. Skeptics argue these experiences are dreams, sleep paralysis, or psychological projection, and in many cases they probably are. But the hybrid program theory persists and evolves, because it offers a cohesive explanation for countless isolated phenomena: the missing time, the strange scars, the sense of being watched, the dreams of star beings and sterile rooms in infants that vanish. But it goes deeper. Proponents believe that the program is not merely about genetics, but consciousness, that these hybrids are being designed to operate on higher frequencies, able to process emotion without being controlled by it, to access knowledge non-linearly, and perhaps even to bridge the gap between species and dimensions. Some go so far as to say that these hybrids already walk among us, quiet, hidden, monitoring. That odd co-worker with strangely penetrating eyes, that child prodigy with no explanation for their abilities, even, perhaps, you. Others say the hybrids live off-world, on ships or in hidden colonies, waiting for a time when human society will be ready to accept them, or collapse, making their emergence necessary. In this version, the hybrids are not a threat. They're a safeguard, a cosmic plan B. Still, not all versions of this theory are benevolent. Some interpret the hybrid program as a form of colonization, not military invasion, but biological overwrite. That Earth is not being conquered by force, but by subtle generational replacement. Some researchers claim to have found physical evidence, unusual fetal tissue, unexplainable blood types, or pregnancies that mysteriously vanish. These accounts are anecdotal, unverifiable, and often deeply personal, but they feed a narrative. A quiet one, a chilling one, that this isn't science fiction. It's happening in the margins. Even more intriguingly, the hybrid program narrative intersects with other theories. The Watchers, the Greys, the Reptilians. In many versions, the Greys are not a species at all, but biologically engineered vessels for consciousness, once fully alive, now degraded and seeking to reclaim vitality by merging with humans. In this view, the hybrids are not tools. They're attempts at rebirth. Because something about it feels eerily familiar. We already experiment with our own genome. CRISPR allows us to edit DNA. We splice genes, grow human organs in animals, and debate the ethics of designer babies. If we're doing it now, why is it so impossible to imagine someone did it to us? And then there sips the mythic echo. From the Nephilim of Genesis to the demigods of Greek lore, nearly every ancient culture has stories of divine human hybrids. Hercules, Gilgamesh, sons of heaven and daughters of earth. Is it coincidence? or memory? And what about those who claim to feel different? Not in the psychological sense, but in the metaphysical. People who sense they don't quite belong on Earth, who feel drawn to the stars, who dream in symbols, who experience emotions in waves rather than words. Some call themselves star seeds, others believe they are hybrids themselves, unaware until something awakens. Is this delusion, or is it identity forming around unexplained truths? You lie back now, eyes closed, and imagine the double helix of your DNA, spiraling not just with genes, but questions. Who made you? Why? And what, if anything, still sleeps within? Maybe you are fully human, or maybe you're something more. The hybrid program offers no clear answers, only implications that humanity is not finished, that we might be part of a grand design, not built for control, but for evolution, not watched, but grown. And if it's true, you're not just stardust. You're a prototype, a bridge between what was and what's coming next. And whether that's terrifying or beautiful depends on who you believe planted the seed. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a quiet desert military base. The air hums with static. Somewhere inside, deep beneath the blinking lights and armed security checkpoints, there's a room. In that room is an object, not of this earth, not just studied but deconstructed, not just admired but dismantled, and most importantly, rebuilt, reapplied, reversed. To understand it, we first need to grasp the premise of reverse engineering in UFO lore, the belief that governments, especially the United States, have recovered downed alien craft, or at least non-human technology, and have spent decades attempting to replicate its function. But this theory goes far beyond gears, propulsion systems, or metallurgy. It suggests that something more fundamental, light itself, has been discovered, dissected, and reprogrammed. Not the kind of light that fills a room or powers a flashlight, but a kind of light that behaves like information, a living force, a field of knowledge encoded in frequency and vibration, perhaps even consciousness. The theory proposes that certain alien technologies don't just emit light as a byproduct, they use it as an operating system. Think about fiber optics. We already transmit data using beams of light through cables, information moving invisibly at astonishing speed. But what if this is just scratching the surface? Reverse-engineered light theory suggests that some recovered alien artifacts manipulate light in non-physical ways, bending it, storing data inside it, or projecting solid illusions with photonic scaffolding. According to believers, some of these devices interact with consciousness. They change their behavior when observed. They encode messages within refracted spectrums. In some versions of the story, alien craft themselves aren't made of solid material in the way we understand it. They are shaped light, bound by intention and frequency. Wild? Yes. But let's follow it further. In 1996, a man named Mark McCandlish claimed he had spoken to insiders at a black-budget military demonstration where a craft, the alien reproduction vehicle, was allegedly displayed. Built by reverse engineering recovered alien craft, it used an energy field that manipulated mass. McCandlish didn't call it reverse engineered light, but what he described rotating rings of plasma, controlled by electromagnetic pulses, was in essence light-based manipulation of gravity. And then there's the famous Bob Lazar. His accounts from Area 51 included propulsion systems powered by gravity waves, generated by a mysterious element 115. The visual effects reported, glowing blue fields, bending space, sound suspiciously like light behaving in ways we can't yet explain. Not reflected, not emitted, but sculpted. If you go deeper into fringe physics, you'll find theories that light has memory, that photons can be entangled across time, that certain frequencies of light, outside the visible spectrum, can stimulate the pineal gland, produce altered states, or even carry complex messages that bypass language entirely. The theory of reverse-engineered light, suggests that at some point, perhaps during a crash retrieval, perhaps during communication, humans encountered a form of light they could not explain. Not merely a beam, but a tool, a container, a consciousness. And rather than destroy it, they tried to replicate it. You might be wondering, if this is true, where are the results? Believers point to sudden technological leaps: lasers, fiber optics, night vision, certain kinds of holography. The way microchips seem to leap forward after the mid-20th century. The emergence of metamaterials, engineered surfaces that bend light in impossible ways. Were these discovered or copied? Some theories suggest the stealth bomber uses radar-invisible coatings developed by studying light-bending materials from recovered debris. Others go further, that certain classified experiments at places like CERN or Sandia Labs aren't just about subatomic particles, they're about the manipulation of photonic fields. Even beyond the government, tech companies have dabbled with the idea. Quantum computing, photonic circuits, even recent experiments with light-based memory, all reflect a deeper shift towards treating light not as a byproduct, but as a foundation for information architecture. In many spiritual systems, light is more than physical. It's symbolic of truth, knowledge, divinity. The Vedas speak of the universe being sung into light. The Gospel of John begins with "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." The ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god, bringer of light, order, and awareness. In Gnostic mysticism, beings of light communicate knowledge telepathically. Sound familiar? Somewhere in a vault, or perhaps not far from your own bedroom lamp, is a piece of technology that doesn't blink or beep. It shimmers, a quiet pulse, a message, trapped in oscillating light, waiting to be understood. And if this theory holds even a fragment of truth, it suggests something beautiful and terrifying, that the universe is not made of matter. It's made of light pretending to be solid, and someone far older and wiser has already learned how to mold it like clay. And perhaps, slowly, quietly, so have we. Let's say you work late at night, combing through digital archives, hoping to stumble across one of those strange government files. You know the type, once classified, now accidentally released. You dig through PDFs, military briefings, flight logs, declassified interviews, until you find it. A curious phrase, an unexplained gap, a redacted paragraph that makes less sense than if it had just been left blank. And then, the next morning, it's SEP's gone. Not the usual 404 not found, not a retraction or FOIA denial, just evaporated. This is the unsettling theory of the evaporating file phenomenon, the growing belief that certain pieces of information about non-human intelligence, anomalous events, or forbidden technologies don't just get removed. They vanish from everywhere: public databases, personal hard drives, archived websites, even physical copies. In some claims, degrade faster than they should. The documents don't rot, they fade. It begins with whispers, researchers claiming that links they had bookmarked now lead nowhere, academics reporting that key pages in old research logs are missing or strangely reworded, pilots recounting their own UFO encounters that were once documented in detail, only to find the digital logbook mysteriously blank when revisited years later. Some point to actual incidents. The 2004 Nimitz encounter, for instance, radar data reportedly recorded during the now famous Tic Tac UFO incident is said to have disappeared. Crew members claimed hard drives were removed from the ship. The radar logs, which should have been automatic and archived by default, were never found. A clerical error or an intentional wipe. Then there's the incident at Menno Air Force Base in 1967, where nuclear missiles were temporarily disabled while strange lights hovered above. Years later, some of the filed reports referenced in internal memos were missing, not declassified. Missing, gone without formal destruction orders. Conspiracy? Sure, But the pattern becomes stranger when researchers find copies of these documents on independent drives, only to discover, sometimes years later, that the files are corrupted. Not just unreadable, erased on a molecular level, like the information itself resisted preservation. Some theorists take this further. They claim the files are not just being removed by human hands, but by non-human influence, that perhaps certain knowledge triggers a kind of cognitive defense system within the information landscape itself, a form of mimetic hygiene, as it's sometimes called, where dangerous knowledge behaves like an unstable chemical. The moment it's replicated, it begins to decay. It's a poetic idea that some truths don't want to be known, or perhaps can't be. Others propose a digital alternative, that these disappearing files are the result of deliberate deep state scrubbing, not deletion in the conventional sense, but obfuscation algorithms, designed not just to erase, but to overwrite, reassign, and camouflage traces of controversial data until even a direct search yields nothing. There's also a growing movement of digital witness protection, where former insiders claim they release documents to certain trusted journalists, only to have the files auto-delete, get infected with self-corrupting code, or simply fail to open after a few days. In one infamous case, a whistleblower claimed that their copy of a video showing non-terrestrial biological evidence degraded every time it was transferred to a new device, until eventually the file became nothing more than static. But here's where it gets weirder. Some of these files leave residue, not literal dust, but digital anomalies, missing timestamps, corrupt file structures, unexplained memory gaps. One researcher found that a corrupted document recovered from a UFO archive caused his word processor to freeze every time he tried to copy a certain paragraph. Another claims their laptop's fan would spin uncontrollably when the file was open, even though it was only text. Coincidence? Glitches? Maybe. Or maybe, just maybe, we're brushing up against a type of knowledge that doesn't want to persist. Not in our systems, not in our minds. This leads to the philosophical branch of the evaporating file theory, the idea that certain truths are anti-persistent, that they dissolve upon contact with consensus reality, that reality itself has version control, and some pieces of data trigger automatic rollbacks, not because they're lies, but because they're too true. Could the universe be built with a kind of cognitive firewall? Some claim you'll find nothing. Others claim you'll find yourself observed, not by agents, but by patterns, strange synchronicities, coincidences stacking, dreams echoing phrases you read, phone glitches, clock resets. A screenshot here, a misfiled report there, scribbled margins in old science journals, burned CDs containing PDFs with scrambled timestamps, the surviving remnants of truths that almost weren't allowed to exist. So next time you download something strange, an old radar log, a memo with redacted coordinates, a grainy scan of a forgotten lab notebook, maybe print it, maybe etch it, maybe hide it inside the pages of an old cookbook, because the theory says if it's true enough it might not stick around long. Truth in this view isn't always about what's found. It's about what can't be kept, and what vanishes faster than anything. Light, memory, and files that were never meant to remain. That's the theory some researchers are now considering, that contact with non-human intelligence may have already occurred through art. This isn't a new idea exactly. Art has always been used to communicate with the unknown, from prehistoric cave paintings to Byzantine icons, from Dadaist chaos to surrealist dreams. Humans have used symbolic forms to express what language can't. But in the case of alien contact, some believe art has served a different purpose altogether, not as expression but as conduit. Let's begin with the ancient. The Lascaux caves in France, over 17,000 years old, contain not only animals and hunts, but what some interpret as star maps and geometric codes. Their symmetry, odd repetition, and the unusual positioning of certain dots over antelope backs suggest a language, a visual grammar. In the Renaissance, as human anatomy met divine symbolism, certain artworks took on strange, almost coded qualities. Consider Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, filled not only with mirror writing and anatomical detail, but also oddly impossible machines and geometries that suggest insight far ahead of their time. Was it genius, or as some have dared to ask, inspiration from elsewhere? But art as contact isn't set confined to the past. In the 20th century, modern artists began reporting dreams, compulsions, and sudden downloads of imagery that didn't seem to come from them. The surrealist painter Ethel Colquhoun claimed she was channeling alien intelligences through automatic drawing. Abstract expressionist Agnes Martin once said, "I paint with my back to the world." When asked what she meant, she clarified, "The ideas come from outside, not from me. I just hold the brush." The composer Karlheinz Stockhausen claimed much of his avant-garde work was given to him by extraterrestrials during meditative states. Sun Ra, the jazz pioneer, insisted he was taken to Saturn and returned with a musical mission to elevate consciousness. These weren't metaphors to them, they were memories, experiences, transmissions. This brings us to the idea of art as a carrier frequency, that is, creative work when produced in trance, flow, or visionary states may act like a tuning fork, aligning with specific informational dimensions. Just as radio signals require resonance to be received, perhaps certain paintings or musical structures are tuned to receive input from non-human intelligences. Some have attempted to test this. When independently interviewed decades later, some of these remote viewers described their drawings as downloads that bypassed thought. They didn't invent, they received. Just like Colquhoun, just like Hildegard, just like Da Vinci. Even in our modern era, something strange continues to bubble up through art forums and AI-generated imagery. There are recurring motifs in dream art communities. Beings with elongated skulls, corridors of light, fractal landscapes, or cities made of music. These aren't just stylistic choices. They repeat across cultures, across platforms, and sometimes across artists who've never seen each other's work. A controversial but compelling experiment was recently conducted by a digital artist who fed hundreds of images described by abductees, sketches of beings, rooms, symbols, into a diffusion-based AI. The result? A coherent visual aesthetic that didn't resemble anything familiar on Earth, but felt familiar to viewers who'd had their own anomalous experiences. Some wept, others reported dreams echoing the shapes. A few reported sleep paralysis. It begs the question, is art where they are speaking to us? And have we misunderstood the entire concept of alien contact by looking only for spacecraft and landing gear, instead of messages woven into our dreams, our symphonies, our sketchbooks? Some say yes. They believe that contact isn't about arrival, it's about reception. Not through headlines or press conferences, but through a quiet pull of the brush. A melody that didn't come from the composer, a sculpture that feels older than its material, a child's drawing that no one can explain. Contact not in the skies but in the studio, not in the data but in the canvas. In this view, humanity has already been contacted. We just call it inspiration. And perhaps that's the safest way for them to speak. After all, who's going to censor a dream? Who will classify a painting? Who will erase a lullaby? So next time you stare into a work of art and feel a strange stillness behind it, pause, because the silence might not be empty. It might be filled with a voice you're only just starting to hear. You trained your whole life for this. Celestial mechanics, orbital dynamics, propulsion systems, planetary geology, emergency procedures, and survival in zero gravity. You learned how to control your breath while your body was flooded with adrenaline, how to remain rational when silence could mean a life support failure, and how to float in absolute darkness with only your heartbeat echoing in your helmet. And you followed the code. There is a code, after all, for astronauts. Not just a formal one, mission protocols. NASA ethics or chain of command orders, but something subtler, something shared in glances and half-spoken stories among those who've truly left Earth behind. You won't find it in training manuals. You won't find it in documentaries, but ask any seasoned spacefarer, and they'll hint at it. There are things we don't talk about. There are things we see, and there are things we feel out there, in the dark. Let's start with the basics. Since the beginning of the space age, astronauts have been selected with the strictest psychological screening imaginable. These are not dreamers or eccentrics. They're rational, focused professionals, trained to interpret phenomena without jumping to conclusions, which is why the subtle shifts in their public testimonies are so important. Take Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon. After his Apollo 14 mission, he became outspoken about consciousness studies and extraterrestrial presence. He claimed that astronauts had encountered things they weren't allowed to disclose, not flying saucers or Martians, but awareness, a non-local intelligence, a presence. He described it not as fear, but as reverence, a sense that the universe is not random. Buzz Aldrin, often depicted as the blunt, no-nonsense pilot of Apollo 11, later admitted to seeing a UFO during the mission, an object tumbling alongside their craft. Though the official explanation was space debris, Aldrin clarified that they couldn't definitively identify it at the time. More telling was his hesitance to speak further. "I know what I saw," he said, "but I don't want to fuel speculation." There sets a pattern to this hesitancy. Toward the void, toward the stars. Several Russian cosmonauts have reported hearing strange music in their heads, melodies with no known source. Some report moments of déjà vu so powerful they were convinced they had been in orbit before. A few even described sensations of being watched, though all instruments showed nothing near their spacecraft. Some say these moments are why returning to Earth can feel like waking from a dream you can't quite explain. This is where the unwritten astronaut code comes in. There are rumors quietly circulated among mission teams that certain space phenomena are flagged for internal discussion only, not to avoid panic, but to preserve credibility. These aren't conspiracies, they're safeguards. And there sits a reason for that. Because some of these stories repeat. Unconnected astronauts across nations and decades have described seeing fleeting lights inside their spacecraft, when no external reflection could account for it. Some describe sounds, not mechanical creaks, but whispers, tones, rhythms. One Apollo-era crew member described hearing a pulse behind the silence, like something large breathing far away. It stopped when they re-entered Earth's gravity. Then there sits the experience some astronauts refer to as the knock. It sounds absurd, but enough astronauts have mentioned it that it has quietly become legend. A sudden tapping or knocking sound, soft, deliberate, heard on the outer hull of the ship, never during re-entry, always during deep orbit or isolation. Sensors show nothing. Cameras catch nothing, but the sound is unmistakable. Tap, tap, and then silence. One Chinese astronaut, Yang Diwei, famously reported this during his 2003 flight on Shenzhou 5. He was alone in the module when he heard a knocking sound on the spacecraft's body, like someone knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. After landing, he checked the exterior. No damage, no explanation. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos. They all attribute these phenomena to psychological stress, shifts in inner ear pressure, or mundane acoustics. But not all astronauts are satisfied with that. Some privately believe that space isn't empty, that there are frequencies, energies, intelligences, something woven into the very fabric of what we call vacuum, and that when you venture far enough into it, you don't just observe it, you touch it, and sometimes it touches back. One former astronaut, speaking anonymously in an off-record interview, said, "Space doesn't feel like nothing. It feels like potential, like the moment before someone answers the phone." There are even stories, half-joked, half-believed, of astronauts dreaming shared dreams during long missions, of communicating with things that don't use words, of looking out the window and feeling known. These stories don't make the headlines, but among those who've seen Earth from the outside, they're passed quietly, respectfully, not as warnings, as invitations to take the mystery seriously. And so the code persists. Speak carefully. Don't exaggerate. Don't speculate in public. But if you felt it, if you saw something that shouldn't be there, you're not alone. We've all felt it too. Because the final frontier may not be about exploration at all. It may be about initiation. And maybe the stars aren't waiting to be discovered. Maybe they're still waiting for us to listen. You've seen them in paintings and ancient scrolls. You've heard them described in folklore, in myths that blur the line between gods and strangers. And now, floating in orbit above your planet, you're beginning to understand the weight of those old stories. There's a theory quietly persistent and impossible to disprove, that whatever intelligence has been watching us never truly left. It simply learned how to blend in. The disguise theory is not your typical ancient alien speculation. It doesn't argue that spaceships came down and built the pyramids. It doesn't try to retrofit mythological gods into astronauts with jetpacks. Instead, it proposes something far more subtle, and perhaps far more terrifying. What if advanced, non-human intelligences have already integrated themselves into our reality, not by conquest or contact, but by camouflage? Let's begin with the roots. Across thousands of cultures and isolated civilizations, we find eerily similar motifs. Strangers who arrive suddenly, teach strange things, walk among people for a time, and then disappear. Sometimes they glow, sometimes they have no shadows, sometimes they speak languages no one remembers learning. In Japanese Shinto folklore, there are the Tengu, mountain-dwelling entities that appear as humans but are not quite right. Watchers, tricksters, warriors of forgotten knowledge. In Irish myth, there are the Tuatha De Danann, a supernatural race that arrived in a flash of light and lived side by side with mortals before retreating underground. In the Dogon tribe of Mali, there are oral traditions of beings from the star Sirius B, detailed knowledge that existed before the star's scientific discovery. These aren't fringe anomalies. These are cultural patterns, threads pointing to the possibility that humanity has, for millennia, been brushing against something foreign, something that doesn't announce itself, something that walks in disguise. Now consider this: if a species is sufficiently advanced, not just technologically but cognitively, it would not need to arrive in ships or hover in our skies. It could embed itself within our systems, our stories, our perceptions. This is the core of the disguise theory. It suggests that non-human intelligence has learned the art of invisibility, not through cloaking devices, but through plausibility. It appears in ways we don't question. It feels familiar. It mirrors us just enough to remain undetected, like a chameleon tuned not to color, but to expectation. Have you ever heard of the three men in the black car? In the 1960s, during the height of the Cold War and UFO fever, countless witnesses across the United States and Europe reported being visited by mysterious men in identical black suits. The men sometimes blinked too slowly. Their smiles lasted too long. One was said to be fascinated by a ballpoint pen, asking if it was a weapon. They spoke in outdated phrases like greetings or good day Earth person, and sometimes they disappeared without walking out the door. The assumption was they were alien. But what if they were pretending to be human, pretending to be alien? The disguise theory suggests that such encounters are not mistakes, but tests, a way of observing how we respond to the abnormal cloaked in the nearly normal, the uncanny dressed as the bureaucratic. What better camouflage than to act just off-kilter enough that people discredit the entire event as hallucination? This ties into a sub-theory known as mimetic saturation, the idea that when non-human intelligence wants to move unnoticed, it floods culture with so many false versions of itself that the real ones are drowned in noise. Think about it. Aliens in pop culture, government psyops, tabloids. It's not suppression, it's saturation. The truth becomes invisible by being made ridiculous. And here sits where things get stranger. These beings aren't described as biological or even mechanical. They seem to shift depending on who's perceiving them. One astronaut described them as looking like engineers. Another said they looked like monks. Another, I felt like I was looking at a memory someone implanted in me. What? Disguise. Not as deception, but as translation. Because if you're a higher intelligence, interacting with a species like ours, it might not be ethical to reveal yourself directly. We're fragile, easily rattled, so instead you slip in through dreams, through folklore, through shapes that don't trigger fear but curiosity. And there's precedent. In nature, mimicry is one of the most powerful evolutionary tools. The orchid mantis becomes a flower, the octopus becomes the reef, the parasite becomes the hormone. If Earth life can master disguise, why wouldn't something older and smarter do the same? And here sits the thought that might keep you up tonight, even in orbit. What if disguise isn't set just a survival strategy? What if it sits the preferred method of contact? Not because they're hiding from us, but because they are us, in forms we haven't learned to recognize yet. The whisper in your intuition, the stranger on the train who gives a strangely comforting nod, the folklore that repeats across cultures that never touched. And maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for us to stop looking for flashing lights in the sky and start looking at the quiet places in our minds, in our myths, in our dreams. Because if the disguise theory is true, then first contact didn't happen. It's always been happening. And the only real question left is, there are moments when silence is more deafening than sound, especially when that silence occurs in a black box, in a recording that should exist but doesn't, in a signal that went out but never returned. The story of erased flight recordings is not just one of technical malfunction or bureaucratic error. It's a mystery that sits quietly at the edge of aviation history and whispers, someone didn't want us to know. But what if those recordings vanish? Not damaged, not overwritten, not destroyed in a crash. Erased. Welcome to a theory quietly tracked by pilots, air traffic controllers, and a handful of ex-intelligence operatives. The pattern of vanishing or corrupted flight data, following encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, what the public might call UFOs. One of the most unsettling cases comes from Flight NAR 892, a military test flight conducted over the Pacific in 1996. The aircraft, an experimental surveillance jet, was manned by 2 pilots and observed in real time by radar operators on the ground. Halfway through the mission, the jet abruptly climbed at an impossible angle, entered a brief freefall, and then returned to level altitude. Communications went silent for 72 seconds. A declassified report from Chile's aviation authority details a commercial pilot flying over the Andes who encountered what he described as a pulsing sphere of blue light. His voice, recorded live in the cockpit, becomes increasingly panicked, then static. When the plane landed safely, the entire sequence was missing from the voice logs. In another infamous case, Iran Air Flight 743, en route over the Caspian Sea in 2007, was briefly lost from radar. Upon reappearing, the plane had deviated 17 miles off course without the pilot's awareness. The flight data recorder showed a perfect log, except for a 3-minute gap where the plane's position, speed, and altitude froze on the same frame, like a paused video. You could chalk these up to technical errors. You could say coincidences happen, but eventually a pattern forms. Encounters with strange objects in the sky, sudden instrument glitches, missing time. This has led to what's now known among aviation insiders as the silencing protocol theory. It doesn't claim that all missing recordings are cover-ups, but that some could be, especially when multiple systems fail simultaneously around the time of an unexplained encounter. There are 3 competing theories. The first is the most obvious: government suppression, black ops programs, advanced experimental craft, or surveillance systems being tested without public knowledge. When a civilian or military pilot encounters them by accident, the data is erased to protect the project. The second theory is more exotic: external interference, that whatever the pilot encountered had the ability to disable or erase electronic records in real time. Not a weapon, not a jamming signal, but something more elegant, like a higher intelligence choosing what we get to remember. That brings us to the third and most unsettling theory: cooperative forgetting, a fusion of human suppression and non-human coordination. In this version, there is an unspoken agreement: some things we don't record, some truths we let vanish, and not everyone involved is entirely conscious of why. Consider this chilling testimony from an anonymous ATC operator in New Mexico. I watched it on radar. It was there, fast, too fast. The pilot saw it, called it in. Then we lost the plane for a minute. When it came back, it was off course. I wrote up the report. The next day, the radar playback file had a new timestamp. The event was gone, and so was the pilot's recording. And then there are the psychological consequences. Many pilots report memory fog after these events. Vague dreams, a feeling of having experienced something but being unable to describe it. One even confessed to having recurring dreams about a light shaped like an eye, always hovering at the edge of his consciousness. Could it be that the recordings aren't the only things being wiped? Could consciousness itself be edited? And maybe it sits not malicious. Maybe it accepts mercy. Maybe we're not ready to see what was on those tapes. And maybe, just maybe, the silence is the contact. So the next time you hear about a plane veering off course, or a pilot saying they saw something impossible, or a black box that mysteriously fails at the crucial moment, ask yourself, in the vast ledger of space exploration, most missions end in one of three ways: triumphant discovery, mechanical failure, or graceful retirement. But there exists a lesser-known fourth category: missions that vanish, disappear, go quiet without warning, and never speak again. Among these strange absences, a handful have become legends, and one of the most whispered, most theorized about, most unnerving stories is this: the case of the stolen probe. And it did, for a time. Multiple amateur trackers, those hobbyist astronomers who listen to the sky with radio dishes and pass orbital paths like bedtime stories, claimed to have caught brief pings from NOAA 19A in the early 2010s. Just weak signals, no data packets, bouncing faintly from the void. They said it followed a wide looping pattern past the lunar orbit. Not quite deep space, but farther than most public probes dared venture. Then it vanished. Now, spacecraft malfunction all the time. Deep space is punishing. Equipment fails, power reserves deplete, solar radiation fries delicate boards. But in this case, there was a peculiar twist, a final signal. It came from an Australian tracking station, a brief fragmented transmission that lasted less than 7 seconds. The signal wasn't in standard binary, nor telemetry code. Instead, it was a strange repeating modulation, an alternating pulse pattern that one physicist described as not natural but not quite artificial either. It didn't align with any known encryption. And then, silence. Here's where it gets weird. Within a week of that final ping, a Chinese military research vessel operating in the South Pacific abruptly changed course and began scanning an unlisted region of ocean with high-frequency sonar. Satellite imagery showed a deployment of strange underwater equipment, a mesh of sensors, communication buoys, and something that resembled a retrieval crane. Days later, the vessel left. The area was empty. Had something fallen back to Earth? Debris from the probe? Or had the probe never been lost in space at all? One theory that began to circulate among defense analysts was that NOAA 19A had been intercepted, not just electronically jammed, but physically taken, removed from orbit and rerouted. A stolen satellite. But who or what could steal a spacecraft? there are three major camps of belief. The first is the human rival theory that Noah 19.0 was seized by another nation, possibly China or Russia, using a classified satellite interceptor program. Both countries have tested anti-satellite weapons, including kinetic kill vehicles and grappling arms. In this scenario, the signal was a distress call. The underwater sweep was the recovery of a payload, or worse, reverse engineering of American tech. But this theory struggles under scrutiny. Noah 19.0 was not in low Earth orbit. It was far beyond the reach of known interception platforms, and the energy required to grab and redirect such a probe would be massive, highly detectable, and publicly embarrassing if discovered. Yet no admission, denial, or confrontation ever occurred. The second theory is stranger extraterrestrial interference. Some analysts point to the odd pulse pattern in the final signal as an exotic signature, possibly a probe hijacked not by humans but by others. The idea isn't new. Carl Sagan once speculated that deep space monitoring systems might act as lures designed to provoke interest from any intelligence watching. And some believe Noah 19A might have gotten too close to something. And then there's the third theory, the most unsettling of all, the covert program theory. In this version, the satellite was never lost. The disappearance was staged, the signals were faked, the amateur trackers were misled, and Noah 19.0 wasn't stolen. It was recalled to complete a mission outside the knowledge of the public, even outside the knowledge of most governments. A mission designed to explore, or contact, or perhaps obey something beyond our world. In classified forums, there are whispers of other probes like it. Sisters in silence, launched without documentation, aimed at coordinates no astronomer would recognize, reporting not back to Earth, but to a relay of unknown design. These craft don't send data, they listen, and sometimes they respond to things we aren't supposed to hear. What if certain regions of space are not only inhabited but claimed? And what if our probes, in their blind mechanical wandering, sometimes cross a line that is enforced? Next time you read about a satellite that failed, or a mission that went quiet, or a probe whose final message was unintelligible static, consider this. Maybe it didn't fail. Maybe it didn't malfunction. Maybe it was taken or summoned or simply absorbed into something older than our sky. And maybe there are no logs because the truth wasn't meant to be stored. Not in hard drives, not in transmissions. In that long, cold pause between one signal and the next. In the search for intelligent life, we often imagine the other as alien, a species entirely separate from us, arriving in ships of light, speaking in symbols or telepathy, hovering silently above the clouds or whispering through strange wavelengths. But there's a deeper, older theory. What if the beings we seek were us all along? Let's pause here. It sounds fantastical, like science fiction, but bear with it, because several patterns emerge, strange consistencies in the mythology of alien encounters that begin to make a different kind of sense. If you look at them as mirror reflections rather than invaders, think about the most commonly reported features of greys, the archetypal extraterrestrial figure. Large heads, small bodies, minimal musculature, enormous eyes, tiny mouths, reduced vocal cords, pale skin. These traits align with a future human being evolved in a low-light, sedentary, highly intellectual environment. Perhaps after millennia of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, off-world colonization, and digital consciousness merging. They're not aliens, they're post-biological humans. Slimmed down, whisper thin, no need for brawn, just mind, just memory. Because if they are future humans, why would they come back? According to physicist Michael Masters, who has studied this hypothesis in academic circles, the purpose might be anthropological. Just as we study Neanderthals and build museums around ancient artifacts, they might study us, our wars, our language, our turning points. They may appear in our timelines not to warn us or save us, but to observe, record, collect. You've heard of abduction reports. People claiming to be taken, tested, examined. What if those stories, dismissed so often as fantasy, are real but misinterpreted? Not alien abduction, temporal anthropology, genetic monitoring. A long-term project spanning millennia to preserve or correct the evolutionary record. Now, imagine you're not being visited by them, you're being visited by us. From a future where something went wrong, a genetic bottleneck, a planetary disaster, an irreversible collapse. And what if they're here not to learn, but to retrieve DNA, culture, language, all the things they may have lost or intentionally discarded, only to realize too late how vital they truly were? Let's explore one case. In 1980, at Rendlesham Forest in the UK, a series of military personnel encountered what they described as a glowing object, triangular in shape, hovering near a base. One officer later claimed to have received a binary transmission from the object, a string of 1S and 0S translated years later to contain coordinates of ancient sites around Earth, the pyramids, Nazca Lines, the Temple of Apollo. But there was one more message in the sequence. Origin year 8100. Not a destination, not a location, a date. What if that message wasn't from somewhere, but from when? This flips everything. If they are from 8100 AD, and they're returning here, then we are the anomaly. We are the primitive world, the historical curiosity. Imagine future scientists peering back through time with the same mix of fascination and dread we used to study ancient Rome. What if they're watching to see when the turn happens? When we cross the tipping point? When we become them? Or when we don't sit? Some have argued that the very idea of aliens visiting us, always during critical historical moments, always observing but rarely intervening, makes more sense when understood as self-observation. A civilization chronicling its collapse in real time, bound by rules not to interfere with its own timeline, like time tourists, restricted, grieving, powerless. The ancient astronaut theorists speak of beings from the stars who influenced humanity's development. But maybe it wasn't stars at all. Maybe those ancient gods and sky chariots were time loop artifacts, misunderstood tools from our own future, misread as magic by the ancients. Maybe we were the gods. This theory also explains the obsession with nuclear events. Why do so many UFO sightings cluster around nuclear silos, atomic test sites? Why did multiple decommissioning incidents occur right after unexplained aerial intrusions? If these future beings exist because of a nuclear catastrophe, then of course they'd monitor the moment it began. Of course they'd want to understand the chain of events. Maybe they're trying to keep their own origin intact, even if it means letting us suffer. Here's the paradox. To stop us would be to erase themselves, so they don't. So when you lie under the night sky and wonder if someone's looking back, maybe the face in the window is familiar, maybe the eyes are too large, not because they're alien, but because they were designed to see through time. Maybe their silence is not judgment, but mourning. And maybe the final twist is this. The aliens you fear are not strangers. They are echoes, reflections, versions of you shaped by paths you haven't yet taken, paths that branch tomorrow or 10,000 years from now. And when they watch us stumble forward, repeat our mistakes and fumble for truth in a world on fire, maybe all they start thinking is, we were you. We still are. Above you, there's the sky, vast, deep, and so familiar that you've likely stopped questioning it. It's blue in the day, dark at night, dotted with clouds or stars depending on the hour. But what if that sky isn't just background? What if it's watching? You've probably heard the term panopticon, a prison design in which one central observer can watch all inmates, who never know when they're being observed. The concept was meant to enforce control, not through violence, but through the possibility of surveillance. Because across thousands of reported sightings, declassified files, strange recordings, and silent nights interrupted by flickering shapes. One pattern holds: something is always watching from above. Let sex begin with the numbers. In the last few decades alone, NASA has catalogued over 5,000 confirmed exoplanets, and that's just from a limited slice of sky. Based on statistical modeling, astronomers estimate there may be 100 billion planets in our galaxy, many of which lie within the so-called habitable zone. Statistically speaking, life should be common. Ask anyone who has spent time under the open sky: night guards, sailors, shepherds, pilots, desert monks, hikers, and you'll hear whispers: lights that moved against physics, objects that blinked out mid-flight, shapes that hovered, then vanished. You've likely read the US government's rebranding of UFOs to UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, a convenient term, softer in tone, but the change wasn't cosmetic. It signaled a shift, not just fringe speculation anymore, but acknowledgement that something is happening in the skies, something consistent, something intelligent. Still, most of us look up and feel nothing but distance. That's the brilliance of the system, if there is one: surveillance disguised as scenery. Now picture this: civilizations far older than ours, far more technologically advanced, deploying autonomous observer probes throughout the galaxy, self-replicating, self-maintaining, silent. They don't contact, they don't interfere, they simply watch. This theory is known as the zoo hypothesis, and it suggests that Earth is being monitored, not because we're special, but because we're still primitive, still violent, still unpredictable. And like wild animals in a reserve, we're being allowed to evolve, but only under glass. From orbit, from distance. You may ask, why not reveal themselves? Why hide? Our religions, our hierarchies, our illusions. So instead, they watch. Every launch we make into space is noted. Every broadcast we send into the stars becomes a data point. Every nuclear detonation echoes out into the black and back again. And they listen. Because the sky isn't just sky, it's memory. 1,000 centuries of watchers hiding behind atmospheric distortion, using camouflage we can't decode, slipping between wavelengths like whispers between dreams. And then there's the recurring event of skyquakes. Loud, unexplained booms from the upper atmosphere that resemble sonic booms, but occur without jets or storms. From India to New Jersey, Chile to Siberia, these have been heard and recorded, often followed by a silence too sudden to be natural. Some scientists speculate shifting atmospheric pressure, others wonder if it's cloaked activity, gateways opening, vessels arriving, surveillance repositioning. Because here sits the uncomfortable truth. When you stare into the night sky and see a shooting star, you assume it's a meteor. When you see a light zigzag, you call it a drone. When a triangle of lights floats silently overhead, you convince yourself it's a plane, because you've been trained not to believe in watchers. But belief doesn't change reality. And the reality is, someone or something may be watching right now. In 2001, a group of astronomers using the Very Large Telescope VLT in Chile observed flashes of non-repeating optical signals from Proxima Centauri. They weren't radio waves, they were flickers in the visual spectrum, not noise, not patterns, but deliberate interruptions. They looked like blinks. Years later, similar flashes were seen coming from other stars, quick pulses, sometimes red, sometimes white, always brief, never explained, almost as if a signal was trying to stay under the threshold of our detection. Like Morse code whispered just outside your hearing range. This leads to another theory: techno-signature threshold avoidance. The idea that advanced civilizations intentionally limit the strength of their signals to avoid attracting attention from threats, or to prevent primitive species like us from finding them too soon. Not out of fear, but protocol. Because when you look at the stars, what you're really looking at is time. Light from distant stars takes hundreds, thousands, even millions of years to reach us. The sky you see tonight is a sky that no longer exists, a frozen frame of ancient moments. With technology that bends time or escapes light speed altogether, then your every movement under the sky is recorded. Your language patterns, your technological growth, your emotional states, your wars, your peace treaties, all catalogued in some silent, orbiting databank, not to be judged but archived. A living chronicle of our species, seen from above. Maybe that sips what ancient cultures sensed when they built stone circles aligned with stars, or carved spiral petroglyphs on cliff walls aimed at the heavens, or recorded lights in the skies as omens. Not anomalies. They knew something we sip forgotten. The sky is not a ceiling. It sups a face, an expressionless, endless face. Watching, waiting, remembering. So tonight, when you lie down, close your eyes and feel the quiet pulse of your own breath against the stillness. Know this, you are not alone. You never were. And the stars, they sit still watching. Hello again. You're still here, aren't you? Somewhere between the waking world and the drifting one, your breath has slowed, the room has quieted, and the stars, the very ones we've been whispering about all this time, are still just there, steady, patient, watching. We've wandered through 26 strange theories, hidden fragments, and overlapping echoes from the edge of space and deep beneath your skin. You've walked among impossible symbols burned into stone, heard about files that dissolved into nothing. And through it all, one idea remained. You are not the observer here. If the Earth is an archive, space is the librarian, silent, ancient, full of codes we don't know how to read, whether it's satellites blinking above your house, or probes drifting between asteroid belts, or consciousness itself transmitting outward like ripples in a pool. It all points back to the same thing. We are not as private as we believe. We never have been. Every ancient carving, every sudden flicker of light, every story that ends in and then they were gone, it all hints at presence. Not loud, not violent, not coming to destroy us. Just watching. Just enough to make you wonder. What if the voice inside your head isn't entirely yours? What if that strange dream you had last month was a message, not a metaphor? What if your search history, your biological data, your mood swings, all of it, are just brushstrokes in a galactic case study on emotional development in a mid-tier carbon species? You see, you don't need to believe in little green men, or evil empires, or glowing discs to be part of something cosmic. You're already part of it. You are a node, a signal, a speck on a breathing, rotating archive. And it's possible that everything you've ever done, your grief, your joy, your curiosity, has been marked and remembered somewhere far beyond the sky you can see. Let it calm you. Because what's more comforting than the idea that the universe is listening? That even when you feel forgotten, some ancient presence has recorded your story. That your voice, your questions, your strange little thoughts about simulation theory or dreaming planets, they echo. Let it be a lullaby. The sky that watches you still holds its silence. The probes we can't find still drift somewhere, faithful and invisible. And you get to rest. No need to decode the whole thing tonight. The archive will still be there in the morning, or the next life, or the next galaxy. So go on, close your eyes, breathe a little deeper. Let it soften, because whatever this world is, real or rendered, whatever truth is buried in the stars, you are known, you are never alone. And somewhere, just beyond where thought becomes sleep, they are still listening.